What's up guys, welcome back to another video on what if Deku was transported to Danmachi Season 2 Part 7. And my Discord currently does not want to work for me, so we're just gonna not be able to go on and do that like I originally had planned. Thank you very much, Discord, thank you very much. So we are going to go ahead and just get right on with the episode, or with the video. So Deku enters the Hermes Familia room and notices that it's basically empty, except for a girl that has blue hair. She looks at Izuku kind of confusingly. Of course, she knows about Deku and his exploits in the dungeon, to say the least. So she knows very well that Izuku must be here for some sort of reason. She knows he moves with a purpose most of the time, so she walked over to Izuku and asked him, "Why are you here?" He's like, "Oh, hello. I am here to speak with Hermes. I was sent here by my goddess. I have a few questions to ask him." Alphys. And I'm pretty sure that's not how you pronounce her name, but I personally can't remember how it's pronounced in the anime. But I'm talking about the Hermes Familia captain, for people who don't know. So I'll call her Alphys for now. Alphys looked at Izuku very confusingly, as she gestured him over to where Hermes was at. Izuku remembered the god with his weird orange-styled hair that Izuku could never really quite understand. He never understood why the god decided to have orange hair, but to each their own. It's not like he could talk much with his green hair, but whatever. So Izuku walked up to Hermes and looked at Hermes as he gestured and asked the god a couple of questions. It started off all nice and pleasantries. Stuff about like how was Hermes' time on Earth and how he was feeling about everything that has been going on recently. And then Deku slowly let on his irregular purpose for being here. And he said, "Hermes, I got a few questions for you. These questions relate to a single species of creatures." This confused Hermes, but then catching on to what Izuku was getting on about, he understood. So a smile starts to show up on Hermes' face as he looks towards Izuku with an understanding show. And he then asked Izuku, "So what does the great all-powerful Deku want with some of my business decisions? Don't tell me you're here to personally try to change my actions in the way I do things." Izuku sighed before responding that he wasn't here to do that. And if he was, he would have done it way long ago. But then he ended up talking about something different. And he said, "Let's go to your personal office, or a back room of sorts. Speaking about it out here in the public of even your own familia might not be the most intelligent of ideas." So Hermes laughed and obliged with Izuku's statement, and they both went into his back office. Then he started, "Hermes, I know you have some sort of deal with the Zenos. I want to know, what are Zenos? How do they function? And, well, is there any way I can do anything?" Hermes was kind of shocked. He wondered how anyone found out about his relationship with Zenos. The only two people that should know that was Orion and Orerus and anyone in his familia. But whatever. So Hermes laughed and tried to pass it off, but Izuku wasn't allowing it. This got on the god's nerves slightly, but he understood that there was obviously a reasoning. You can't just expect to pull over a fast one on someone who knows what he's talking about. So Hermes sighs and he's like, "Do you really want to listen, boy?" Do understand that from this point onwards, you can't go back to being innocent. As soon as you know everything about the Zenos, you're obliged to help take care of them. And Deku said, of course I'm obliged to help take care of them. They're living beings. But you don't do that for monsters. That's fair, but Zenos have emotion. They're way closer to human than to monsters. They might have been made in the dungeon, but it doesn't change the fact that they have a personality and actions. Oh, Mr. Hero. It's not Mr. Hero, it's an actual job description, or at least it was. A lot of stuff happened. Of course, Hermes didn't want to know all about Izuku's background. But he was a little bit intrigued with what the boy said. It seemed kind of tempting, but Hermes decided to pass up on it for now, understanding that it couldn't lead to anything good from the way the boy was talking. So Hermes popped the $1 million question and asked the boy, what does he want to know? Which caused Izuku to say, well, I want to know a lot of things, Hermes, but one of the major things is this. I want to know what Zenos are. Are they human? Or are they just creatures that act human? Whichever one you choose will depend on how I treat them in the future, so please do keep this in mind. Hermes, obviously being kind of upset by this notion, decides to take Izuku way more serious. He realizes that Izuku's not just someone that he can just get a one-over on whenever he wanted to. So understanding this, Hermes then decided to go ahead and try to change the subject, but that didn't work either. He then instantaneously went on the aggressive, acting towards Izuku like he was some sort of lesser scum, like he was some sort of monster. Izuku wasn't going to let this fly though, as he slowly started to put his actions more and more heavily. And eventually, Hermes realized just to give in. Izuku wasn't going to back down, and neither was he. There was no point on this senseless argument. Hermes sighed and said, Zenos are the reincarnation of human mortals that went back and somehow got picked up by the dungeon. As a result, they are born inside of the dungeon. They retain some of their memories of their surface life, but are born in forms that can't sustain themselves outside of the dungeon for long, because there is no magical energy for them to feed off. This confused Izuku greatly. Even though he had a basic understanding of Zenos, them being reincarnated humans was a weird thought, to say the least. Then again, himself being, in a sense, a reincarnation, even though it was more like transportation rather than reincarnation. So Izuku decided to let it go. So then he asked Hermes, if you know this, why not make it public knowledge? Which caused Hermes to respond, let me ask you a question. Would you like to tell everyone that one of the things that they're facing is actually just another one of them that has been twisted and molded into the form they see now? This started to get Izuku to think. Of course, the adventurers need to keep pushing and need to end up actually defeating the dungeon. For whatever reason, the gods seem to be pretty fixated on that bit. Whether it be for safety or something different, the gods want the dungeon to be done with. And Izuku understood that. So Izuku then said, okay, I understand your reasoning. This isn't the first time I've been a part of a cover-up. Which caused which caused Hermes to kind of laugh. He understood Izuku wasn't joking with his settlement either, which kind of put a fearful glint into Hermes' eyes. He knew this boy better than most, and knew that Izuku could most likely take him out right here and right now. Almost none of his familiar members will be able to defend him, so Izuku decided against taking such a violent answer to one of his many choices that he had to deal with Izuku. Of course, Izuku didn't care about such things and literally was just gonna leave, but it's still a good thing to know for a various amount of reason. After guaranteeing Izuku's complacency in the matter, Hermes and Izuku started talking about multiple things. Hermes realized the existence of Weenie, and understood that she was a dragon-type Zeno, and understood that Izuku had brought her out. This was a very scary realization to him at this time, because he knew that she needed to go back into the dungeon before something bad happened. So Izuku took Weenie back into the dungeon, inside a certain area. This became an area known as the Zeno village. The Zenos there were very suspicious of Izuku, not knowing how to make of his character or anything else of the sort. Then again, Izuku knew very well when to act all tough and when to let his nicer side show. So he did that. He showed all the Zenos that he wasn't some big bad monster they should be afraid of. It was actually more akin to an ally than anything else. And because of this, the Zenos warmed up to him rather quickly. His calm and nicer personality definitely helped out a lot with this one. Eventually, the Zenos decided that Izuku would be permitted to stay if he so wished. Most of the three Zenos that he met were actually really nice and seemed to be the elder. Izuku didn't care all that right now. Right now, he realized there were way more important issues to attend to. The Zenos alone were a serious issue, but Izuku didn't know about any other issues that could be going on. There could be some sort of weird monster camp for Zenos, and Izuku would have no clue. This pained Izuku slightly. He didn't know how he should make of this, so he found his girlfriend, Aiz, and asked her about how she makes of this situation. First off, Aiz was really surprised when she heard Izuku had found a humanoid monster in the dungeon, let alone brought it out of the dungeon, and then even brought it to a camp that holds just humanoid Zenos. And she almost went ballistic when she heard that it was a dragon, or a wyvern to be more consensus. That freaked her out more than anything. Izuku knew this before explaining that she wasn't a bad person at all. Aiz, still a little pet peeved, decided to more calmly think about the situation. And then she asked Izuku what was his plan. And he said that he was very simply just gonna go ahead and, well, fight. And she was kind of confused by that. Before she realized that what Izuku was saying was basically that he didn't know what he was going to do next. He had ideas. Then Aiz recommended something she never thought she would recommend to Izuku. She recommended that they both got out of town for a while. Izuku thought about this and thought it was a very compelling idea. Getting out of town would be a nice thing for them. And especially when, well, them getting out of town would allow them all to relax and chill. I smiled at Izuku's statement, and they agreed. So, they both walked into Loki, and after speaking with Loki and with Loki contesting severely to both of them leaving because an expedition was coming up, he finally got her to agree that it was okay that they left for a little bit out of town and went to go ahead and relax, even though they didn't have any family or anywhere else to go. Eventually, discussion about various other things started happening. They decided what they were going to be doing and what type of time they would spend together and what they would do. They really hadn't had any just them time, so it was a pretty magnificent thing for both of them to be able to think about how they would spend their own time together. Deku and I both decided that they would be able to very simply just go to a nice location. And then Deku remembered something that Bell told him, which was that he had a cabinet up in the forest. Izuku smiled at this and decided to go ask Bell if he could borrow his cabinet for about around 2 weeks-ish. Bell agreed, and Izuku and I decided to set out the next morning. They got there in about 2 days. Neither of them were obviously rushing, and they both had a fun time being able to relax outside of, their house and have fun. Or outside any safe areas. This caused Izuku and I's the ability to just chill out and relax, which was a welcome commodity. They both talked about things that they wanted in the future. I's primarily expressing how she wanted to have a child, which definitely put Izuku in a rougher spot than most case scenarios, but he finally decided, after a lot of begging and pushing, that once they both became a little bit older, that they would have a child. To I's delightment, of course. After a while, Izuku and I's kept talking. They talked about various things, but one of the major things they talked about was their lives leading up to this. This is where Izuku basically explained the entirety of his backstory. How he used to, not really be a hero at all. And he was just a weak kid. But after training and a little help from his master, he became a strong hero that people could depend on. And even though there was tons of mix-ups along the way, it all worked out in the end, as they were all able to, live a happy life. Belle loved hearing Izuku's story about his heroic triumphing, about helping people, and about traveling to even her own world, about him actually being on a case to stop a villain at that point. She loved hearing it all. It was quite an amazing thing for her. So she continued to listen, more intently, of course. Izuku explained to him talking with hundreds of other people and how much he, talked to them all. His actions he took with the other people that were around him, and his ability to fight. He explained that he had learned from his master, just like he had said previously, and that he had taught him many things. And he also did state how he missed his family back there. Then followed up by quickly stating how he wasn't stating that he didn't want to be with her, than he was just missing his life prior, which I's could understand. She missed her family as well, which then I's also talked about her family as a whole too, and what happened with her family. talked about how the one-eyed black dragon took out her family, and how even her mother had died by its hands, which caused Izuku to understand her hatred towards the dragon. And he started to feel it too. But understanding that the one-eyed black dragon now might be bad, but understanding that most likely it was somewhere located within its in the dungeon, Izuku decided to hold off from just directly attacking it until after he made it into the dungeon. So he looked at Aiz and he asked Aiz a simple question: will you follow me into the dungeon? And Aiz said yes, which caused Izuku to smile. And then caused Aiz to give back a beautiful smile as well, which caused both of them to love each other very much. Eventually, after some time had passed, Izuku decided that even though they were chilling out in the cabin, to start training. Him and Aiz started training every day. As they became stronger and quicker, their senses keened in more. It was quite a relaxful experience. And as time passed, Izuku had an even better time with Aiz. And more time passed, and they were just having a blast. Eventually, about around 2 months had passed, and Izuku and Aiz both went back into Aurario. Their 2-month vacation had been really nice, and after getting back there, they had Loki updated both their scores, understanding that Loki probably wanted to check out their stats. So upon doing so, Loki was awestruck. He had saw that Aiz and Izuku were basically equivalent, if not just a little bit higher than each other in the stat block area. She knew that Izuku was easily way stronger than Aiz. It was not even a doubt in her mind that Izuku was stronger. But she knew other things as well, so it shocked her to find this out. With a devilish smile on her face, they continued talking. She had also taken notice that a couple of extra skills were also located there, but she decided not to point them out just yet. Izuku and Aiz both smiled at each other as they continued living throughout their lives. A couple of days went past when Izuku noticed that it was time for him to go back into the dungeon. So on their expedition, they all went back into the dungeon. They got very deep in this time, about around to floor 75. Floor 71 was pitch black. Not even torchlight or magical spell light could actually see it. This confused most of the people that were there, but some people understood what was going on. Of course, doesn't mean they were very excited about it, but some people did understand the situation. Of course, after a while, Izuku and Aiz came back out of the dungeon. Izuku had gone up about around 2 levels at this point, now reaching level 7, while Aiz had gone up about 1, reaching level 6. Izuku and Aiz were both 2 of the strongest party members, and if it had not been Loki's loyalty to her captain, Izuku would probably have been made the Loki Familia captain. Aiz and Izuku continued hanging out more and more. Izuku also trained with Bell. And one day, while he was training with Bell and him decided to go check around outside the dungeon, which wasn't something they usually did. For various reasons, but one of the reasons was because it was just boring. There was nothing really out there, so there was no reason to go check it out. But they decided to do it for fun, of course. Eventually, they found themselves in a very hot area. An area with blistering flames and tons of fire. Of course, Izuku was looking around, trying to see if he could spot anything. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, Izuku felt the heat increase rapidly at an increased rate. And he couldn't tell where it was coming from until he looked down underneath his feet as he saw the ground slowly start to melt. So Izuku jumped out of the way and told Bell to get away. But when he jumped out of the way, out of nowhere, a weird dragon-like monster attacked. Izuku had heard of this creature before. It was known as an Obsidius. But this one seemed to Obsidiuses were well known for having obsidian-colored skin with small cracks along their body, exposing a magma or fiery-looking area. They were known for being very aggressive of their territories, but from what Izuku could tell, this one didn't look anything like an alpha Obsidius and looked more akin to a younger Obsidius, which confused Izuku a little bit because alphas usually are the ones that mainly fight the battles when it comes to a given location, not babies. So Izuku decided to play along for the time being. He started fighting the Obsidius, but he realized that it wasn't really an issue for him, so he decided to back off. He told Bell to get in and start fighting the Obsidius. Bell, obviously being very confused on why Izuku decided to send him after an Obsidius, decided not to question his master's words and instantaneously went in to start fighting. He tried to start attacking it, but the Obsidius batted him away into a nearby wall. Bell got out of the wall and prepared a fighting stance and charged back at the Obsidius, running at it with his full strength. This impressed Izuku a little bit. But sadly, Bell's strength just wasn't enough as he got batted away again. As he got shot back really quick. Izuku looked at Bell with kind of a funny look at his face, like, what are you doing? As Bell emerged himself from the rubble. After Bell got out, he started to get a fighting stance again as he charged back after the monster. He landed blow after blow, getting swatted away. Bell looked at his dagger in his hand, the Hestia knife, or the growth dagger as it's also known as. And channeling all of his power, all of his energy into the dagger, he ran up and sliced the monster, cutting it nearly in half. The monster screamed out of pain as it went recoiling back from the strike as Izuku went in and dealt the finishing blow. Since the monster wasn't made within the dungeon, though, it didn't destroy into particles and just was laying there with its lifeless body. This caused Bell a little bit of distress, but Izuku told him not to worry about it and that it was the circle of life and he should just respect it. Bell, still being, of course, just a little bit arbitrarily upset by this little notion of Izuku just saying, just don't worry about it, it will die. But once again decided not to argue against his master's words, just decided to start fighting it and finished it off. Izuku sighed, understanding that fight was a little bit too easy, but he knew Bell wouldn't be able to handle an alpha one, and an alpha showed up. Then, suddenly, Izuku heard a noise. The noise sounded like a screaming roar, something he has never heard before. A noise that he couldn't even begin to fathom. And suddenly, out of nowhere, an Alpha Obsidius appeared. Something that even Izuku wasn't prepared to even dare fight. Understanding this, Izuku looked at Bell and told Bell, "You'll be fine, I just gotta chuck you real quick." This confused Bell very greatly, as Izuku grabbed Bell and threw him away, sending him flying. Of course, Bell had no clue what was going on, but after getting chucked by his master, he couldn't really say anything else to his master. Izuku looked back, looking at the Alpha Obsidius, something that he didn't know if he was 100% prepared and ready to face. But Izuku thought there was no time like the present. Izuku started going full caling 20% at the start of the fight, trying to fight against the Alpha Obsidius. This caused him a bit of pain and a lot of time constraints. But the Obsidius was slowly but surely taking damage, so Izuku decided to go up to 30% to increase his pressure on the beast, and then 40%, and then 50%. Right now, Izuku's blows were easily taking care of the creature. The creature realizes that he had messed up in even trying to fight Izuku. So looking at Izuku, he then bowed down and said, "I submit." This caught Izuku off guard. Izuku didn't know what to do. But he looked at the creature and said, "You can talk?" The Obsidius was very confused by Izuku's words because he figured it was common knowledge that they could speak human language. But understanding that not many humans even knew of their existence, much less alone were alive after finding out their existence, he decided to let pass. "Yes, I can speak." "Huh. Okay. And what? What do you want me to do?" The Alpha Obsidius looked at Izuku and said, "I want to become under your tutelage." "My tutelage, eh?" Which the Alpha Obsidius said, "Yes. Under your tutelage. I believe it'll serve me great wealth to become under your tutelage and learn from you." "Okay. And do you got a name?" "No, I do not have a name." "Okay. So you're a fire dragon, correct?" "Yes, that is correct. Even though I am an Obsidius, it isn't incorrect to call me a fire dragon." "Okay. How about this? Your name will be Vulcan. How does that sound? Sound cool enough for you?" "A name bestowed onto me by my master does not need to sound cool." "Okay then, Vulcan. Let's have some fun, my friend." "Yes, master." Vulcan then said in a resolute tone, as he then started to glow, which confused Izuku, but after he was finished glowing, he saw that the man ended up looking very similar to Vulcan stood in front of him. The man looked like he was a foreigner with red hair. He had a couple markings underneath his eyes, but other than that, he just looked like a regular man. Izuku then asked, "Vulcan, is that you?" Which Vulcan responded, "Yes, master. I've taken on a human form to help conceal my presence when we're inside the city." "Oh, you can do that?" "Yes, master. As long as you wish it, I can take on nearly any form that I have a decent understanding of, or that I have consumed in the past. Wait a minute. Yes, that does mean that I've consumed humans in the past, but don't worry, Master. I shan't consume any humans that you do not permit me to. Okay. Well then. After I go pick up Belle that I chucked all the far away, let's go. Yes, Master, if that is your wish. And that's where I'm going to leave this episode off. If you all liked it, hit the like button, and if you enjoyed it, hit the subscribe button, and until next time, goodbye.